The Scout class inside of Deep Rock Galactic sets a relatively high-performing standard for the game. While being arguably one of the best options for survivability due to its high mobility and above-average firepower, the support equipment that is provided to the Scout can both passively and actively change the team's effectiveness inside of the game. My name is Notsens, and thank you for joining me on my guide that covers the Scout class inside of Deep Rock Galactic. Before I get into details, I would like to say that I'm going to cover a general overview of the Scout class inside of Deep Rock Galactic. I will also briefly discuss my preferences when playing Scout, but I would like to add the disclaimer that this guide is not designed to tell you how you should play the Scout class. Every player's preference when it comes to weapons, equipment, and overall playstyle is unique and different. With this being said, I hope to discuss the advantages that this class has, as well as cover the weapons, support equipment, as well as some tips and tricks that I've personally picked up from my experiences inside of the game. Starting off, the Scout class is the only one that carries the powerful flare gun, and the entire team depends on the Scout for life. I'll discuss the flare gun in more detail in a few moments, but it's important to note that the flare gun is different than the throwable flares used by all Dwarves. While the Scout is also equipped with throwable flares, the flare gun is unique in terms of its effective range and radius, so the light provides an important advantage for the team to have in certain situations, such as needing to hold down areas from swarms. Arguably, the flare gun is the most important piece of equipment inside of the game. To scout ahead, this class is also equipped with a grappling hook, allowing the Scout to reach elevated and difficult places quickly. This grappling hook is part of the reason for the class's high mobility, and can also be used to navigate terrain quickly. Just keep in mind that it's important to remember Deep Rock Galactic's company slogan, and leave no dwarf behind, especially because there are dangers in the caves such as spitballers, cave leeches, and grabbers that can be difficult to face and can even kill you without proper support from your teammates. So now that you know what this role specializes in, let's get to the fun part and talk about the actual weapons, explosives, and support equipment that the Scout class can be supplied with. I would like to mention that I'm not going to be discussing overclocks or specific weapon builds in this video, only because I feel this would take too much time, and talking about specifics when it comes to weapon upgrades really does deserve its own video. For those of you who are interested specifically in weapon builds for the Scout, I'll leave a link in the description for a website called carl.gg, which is a great resource that's used for other community members to create and share a variety of class builds for each dwarf. The builds can be filtered by dwarfs, weapons, and even specific overclocks. Users can also leave a comment and discuss the build more in detail. This video isn't sponsored by them or anything, I just appreciate what they do and I think it's a really useful community tool. With this being said, I'm still going to discuss all the weapons for this class, as well as their advantages and disadvantages that they have inside of the game. Starting off with the primary weapons, the Scout class can either be equipped with the Deep Core GK2 Assault Rifle, the M1000 Classic Self-Loading Battle Rifle, or the Drac 25 Plasma Carbine. The Deep Core GK2 is the Scout's standard primary weapon, meaning that it's automatically unlocked and doesn't need to be unlocked through assignments. Overall, the GK2 is a good middle ground in terms of primary weapons. It has average accuracy, average fire rate, and is average when it comes to crowd control. Personally, I use the GK2 quite frequently when I need the benefit of fully automatic fire, while still needing to maintain some degree of single-shot accuracy for longer ranges. This is useful in elimination game modes, as well as any game mode with a critical weakness buff. The first alternative primary weapon for the Scout is the M1000 Classic Rifle. This rifle is heavily based off the M1 Garand rifle, and even has a distinctive ping when being reloaded. The M1000 is semi-automatic only, and has a high emphasis on single-shot damage. This means that this weapon has excellent damage and accuracy, but its slow fire rate and short magazine size means that it lacks the ability for good crowd control, or dealing with multiple enemies at once. This weapon also has a low ammo count, so it's important to conserve ammo. The M1000 can also charge its shots, meaning that holding down the trigger will charge the rifle, firing a bullet with perfect accuracy that does double damage, but it also uses 2 bullets instead of 1. Personally, the M1000 is my favorite Scout weapon, and the one I use most frequently. The community seems to have a mixed opinion on the M1000, but I personally enjoy using it for its high damage output and overall it being super fun to use. The other alternative weapon for the Scout class is the Drac 25 Plasma Carbine. The Drac 25 is the exact opposite of the M1000 in terms of overall purpose. The Drac is fed from a single ammo pool, similar to the gunner's minigun, and doesn't require reloading. With this being said, this weapon can overheat after constant fire and will need to cool down. Other than not requiring reloading, the Drac also has a high fire rate and is excellent for crowd control and dealing with high amounts of enemies at short range. The disadvantages of the Drac are its accuracy and performance at anything other than short range, as well as its overheating mechanic possibly being an issue without the proper upgrades installed. For my personal preference, I feel that the Drac is highly situational, and I really only use it in certain situations where a high amount of firepower at short range is a benefit, such as dealing with dreadnoughts. Overall, in terms of primary weapons, it can be broadly stated that the M1000 is great at long ranges and single-shot firepower. The Drac 25 is designed with short ranges in mind and has great firepower up close, while a deep core GK2 serves as a good middle ground in between these two extremes in terms of purpose. Now that we covered the three primary weapons, let's quickly discuss the secondary weapons that can be paired with this class, which are the jury-rigged double-barrel shotgun, the NUK-17 dual-wield submachine guns, and the Bolt Shark X80 crossbow. The standard secondary weapon for the Scout is the jury-rigged shotgun. The shotgun fires pellets and can fire both barrels in quick succession. This is good for large amounts of damage on one or multiple targets at short range. With this being said, the weapon's accuracy diminishes substantially with anything past short range. The best part about the shotgun is an overclock called Special Powder, which allows the shotgun blast to push the player anywhere from 15 to 50 meters in the air, depending on the timing and if both barrels are fired. Personally, I enjoy using the Special Powder overclock, but as an actual weapon, the double-barrel shotgun would be situational and up to personal preference. The first alternative secondary weapon for the Scout is the NUK-17 submachine guns. These are dual-wield submachine guns with a whopping 50 combined magazine size. These submachine guns have a very fast rate of fire and a quick reload, which amounts to a high amount of firepower at short to mid-range. The downsides of the submachine guns are similar to the shotgun, in which the accuracy is very poor at longer ranges. This weapon also runs out of ammo very quickly. Finally, the other alternative weapon that can be unlocked is the Bolt Shark X80 crossbow. This crossbow, obviously, fires arrows one at a time and is accurate at longer ranges. This crossbow does have two kinds of arrows. One is a regular bolt, and one is a special bolt. The user can hit R to switch between the different kinds of bolts. Depending on the perks, the special bolts can be a pheromone dart, a chemical explosion bolt, or a taser bolt. Also, depending on the mods used, some of the bolts can even be picked up and reused. The X80 crossbow is a very unique weapon and it's very fun to use. However, practicality is lacking in my opinion. I would personally choose to use one of the other secondary weapons unless the crossbow is something I feel like using. Concluding the secondary weapons, both the shotgun and the submachine guns are great at shorter ranges, while the crossbow is more accurate at longer ranges and has unique special bolts. The next piece of equipment that we'll cover for the Scout are the Throwables. The Scout class has three different types of Throwables to choose from. These are the Inhibitor Field Generator, or the IFG, the Cryo Grenade, and the Pheromone Canister. The IFG is thrown like a grenade and sticks to the surface that it touches. It will release an inhibitor field that will slow down any enemy that enters the field at 25% speed, as well as increase any damage taken by 30%. IFGs are great to be used for larger enemies such as oppressors, dreadnoughts, and bulk detonators. The second throwable unlocked is the Cryo Grenade. The Cryo Grenade releases a large icy explosion when thrown. This can instantly freeze most enemies. When an enemy is frozen, it can receive up to 3 times the amount of damage and are completely frozen from moving, which means that they can't move until being thawed out or breaking free from the ice. Flying enemies such as Bacteria will drop to the floor and shatter, so it's a good idea to use the Cryo Grenade in a bulk group of enemies. Cryo Grenades can also instantly freeze Praetorians, making them very easy to kill, and this is how I mostly use the Cryo Grenades. The last throwable that can be used by the Scout is the Pheromone Canister. Once thrown, any enemy in the radius of the blast will be attacked by other enemies, which causes mass infighting. This grenade can be useful for large groups of enemies, however I personally rarely use it for anything other than a gimmick. Moving on from the weapons and explosives, let's talk about the two unique pieces of equipment that is provided to the Scout class to help the rest of the team, these being the grappling hook and the flare gun. Starting with the grappling hook, This is a handheld grappling gun that is used specifically by the Scout. Unlike the zip lines that can be used by the gunner role, the Scout's grappling hook can only be used by the Scout. Additionally, the grappling hook can be used at any angle and doesn't need to be grounded in order to be used. Please keep in mind that there will be a short cooldown between uses of the grappling hook, so try to avoid fall damage the best you can. The other piece of equipment used is the flare gun. As I mentioned previously, the flare gun is different than the throwable flares used by every class. Most notably, the flares used from the flare gun are a lot brighter and can be launched into any surface. The flare gun is always a welcome addition to any firefight, but I've personally found using flares to be most effective when lighting up objective areas or areas used for defending against enemy swarms, as well as fighting dreadnoughts. So now that we've covered the Scout class in detail, let's quickly cover some of the tips and tricks that I personally learned through my experience inside of the game that can hopefully be helpful to other players. I mentioned this earlier, but my first tip is that cryo grenades can instantly freeze Praetorians and kill flying Macteria by having them fall to the floor. Other than making enemies easier to kill, keep in mind that friendlies that need to be revived can't be damaged, so throwing a cryo grenade in front of a downed teammate before reviving them can freeze the surrounding enemies long enough to revive them and get them back into the fight. My second tip is a simple one. Please make sure that the flares from the flare gun are being used. The caves are dark, and having light is a necessity for navigating large areas and fighting enemies. Unless on missions with a down drop pod or excavation, the Scout's flares are going to be the primary source of light used. My final tip is to keep a lookout for engineer platforms for mining. Very often, engineers and Scouts can work hand-to-hand for getting resources that are too elevated to jump to. Since the Scout has the grappling hook, engineers will often shoot a platform under or around resources at higher elevations, allowing the Scout to zip up and grab the resource. If there is no engineer or platform available, using a power attack from a pickaxe near the resource can create a stepping point large enough to hold on to while mining the resource. Again, just be careful of fall damage. That's all I have for this guide on the Scout class. Like I mentioned, I really wanted to cover a brief overview of the class and not go into too much detail regarding weapon upgrades and overclocks. If you would like to see a video going into more detail about this, I do ask that you leave a comment letting me know. If you did like the video and would like to see more like this, I also ask that you leave a like on this video. This personally helps me with YouTube's analytics and allows the video to reach more people. Thank you for watching again, and I hope you have a good time playing the Scout class inside of Deep Rock Galactic.